Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul. I work for a company called Micrographics. We are an Autodesk reseller and we hail from Cape Town, South Africa. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. You are welcome to join the chat and communicate. Please note there is a delay, so I will be reading your comments as they come through. The topic of the webinar today is whether or not the owner of a built asset should own ACC licenses, that's Autodesk Construction Cloud licenses, to retain and manage their digital twins. On the agenda today, we'll be looking at owner and operators, and that they have vested interests in the digital twins, that the owner-operators usually have a BIM representative to manage their data for them, that the owner of the Autodesk Construction Cloud hub has access to everything, that the data on the hub belongs to the owner of the hub, that the data on the hub can be maintained over the life of the asset. We'll see that Revit cloud files can be upgraded as the project is upgraded, that the data on the hub extends to the original twin in Autodesk Tandem, that projects can be transferred from hub to hub retrospectively, and that it's best to retain ownership of the digital twin from the beginning because there might be limitations on projects that you can transfer from hub to hub. Firstly, with regards to the vested interests, consider, for instance, that you own a property portfolio or that you are a corporate with a headquarters that you need to maintain over, argument's sake, 60 to 100 years. It's a large investment, sometimes millions of rands, tens of millions of rands, and your savings and your money that you make off the asset would run over a long time. So it's a bit like planting a forest and leaving it to your children and grandchildren to reap the rewards. In this case, maybe your shareholders. Firstly, South Africa does not have its own hub. Currently, although some data centers do exist in South Africa, we do not yet have an Autodesk construction hub on the AWS server. So there is an European EU server and a USA server. And when you purchase a contract with Autodesk, then every contract can create a hub. But typically, if you are South African, then you would create your hub in the European Union. And that is because the European data security laws are more closely aligned to the South African data security laws. The capability of the project depends on the owner of the project or the administrator of the object owning at least one of the licenses needed on the project. So what do we mean by that? When you look at Autodesk Construction Cloud, you can see that in this case we've got a docs license, we've got a design collaboration license which allows you to have swim lanes that you can use to share information based on the UK level 2 BIM protocol, secure sharing of information, federated model, clash detection in model coordination, right? So if you want to, typically this is the license that guys on the design side would go for if you're an architect or a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer and you are designing, then you want to use one of these licenses, especially the Pro license, the BIM Collaborate Pro license, because it allows you to co-author models just like you would on a local area network. Your Revit files can be central files in the cloud. That's pretty familiar to everybody. But if you want to activate this on this project, the guy that started this project, or the person that started this project, must have at least a Collaborate Pro license to enable this workflow. Afterwards, or before the project is created, you can nominate somebody to wield your licenses for you. The hub still stays in your possession, but you might have your BIM representative manage your hub for you. So at least one person with the licenses that they need. You could also assign those licenses to somebody else that's going to work on the project. The point is that you might not just need to purchase the license to start the project, but you can use the license to its full capability on the project. But the fact remains that if you want to have that capability when the project is live, you need to own at least the license of the capability that you would like to have. And that also extends to the build license. And the build license is when we get on site and we now want to communicate between the site and the design team for requests for information, submittal of packages, forms that we need to fill in, QA, QC, health and safety, asset management, whatever it is that we need to do on site and communicate that back to the design, then we also need one of those licenses. And again, you can palm that license off on someone else. But while the project is live, you need the licenses to enable that capability. So there will be a cost incurred if you own the project data yourself, and that's just simply by virtue of those licenses being needed to initiate or to make the project go live. And again, you can then assign that license to someone else to make sure that you don't waste the money. Owners can purchase their licenses and then assign them to third party managing their hub. Just discussed that. The digital twin is an electronic representation of the built asset. So just like in engineering, if you can picture in your mind something like an aircraft, it is on the mechanical side one of the most developed digital representations of a physical asset, but it does not only have the drawings and the 3D modeling that is required, but also the information that is attached to those elements that allows you to manage that that physical object over its life. All right? A building is exactly the same. And so the digital twin is an electronic representation of the built asset. But the digital twin is more than that, because when you think about something like an issue, then the information that is in the issue is in the project itself. All right, so I can go and have a look and see that somebody asks somebody else to get rid of a Beetle car. And we can see that the car is gone. So this issue is done. And that's the original image. All right, but I can see that who created the issue, who said that the car mustn't be there, and then who signed off on that. So there's an example of information that I wouldn't be able to see from, for argument's sake, a three-dimensional model. I would just see that the car isn't there. I wouldn't know that there was a car and somebody said take the car away. Or for that matter, who it was and when it was. Or if anybody commented on it. So this form of information is also part of the information model. And it might be of interest to the owner-operator. So they would like to go and see, for instance, what happened in this instance. Why is it that that car is now gone? And then you say, yes, that car is gone because, let me look at it. That guy said that it must be gone for that reason, and this guy removed it. So you can imagine for yourself that there are many such instances where it would become relevant for an owner-operator to retrospectively inspect the information that is contained within that digital twin. It extends also to things like maintenance schedules, digitized maintenance schedules and parts lists, depreciation of assets. There are so many different ways in which this plays in, where the information is additional to the geometric information that's there, and it could be managed by various applications that plug into the database that you are creating. Right? This is the Autodesk interface that we are looking at here. The point is that the digital twin is a representation of the built asset, and it's got information in it that you want to be able to have access to. The asset usually has a decades-long life and must be maintained and operated to save or make the owner money. That's true. If you can optimize your energy usage and you can maximize your occupancy and at the same time maintain the asset as well as you can, and also replace assets when they become too expensive to maintain as opposed to replace, then those are the things that you want to consider over the life of the asset. And in that way, the building or the built asset will give you the greatest returns. If you don't do it, and you don't do the required maintenance, or if you don't have predictive maintenance and transducers that are feeding data back from electrical cables and piping, then you might not see that, for argument's sake, a bearing on a chiller has gone, and that, you know, the thing's becoming expensive now on electricity usage, and that means that something's probably about to seize. So let's go up there and go and see if we can fix that thing before it breaks, because when it breaks, it's going to be more expensive, and then we're going to lose money. All right, so that's the sort of things that we're interested in. Additions and alterations also must be reflected in the digital twin, usually before the work occurs. Well, preferably. So you often find that, great, you're a corporate owner and now your building is yours. Maybe you downsize or you build new headquarters and you've got this building on your books. Now what do? You rent it out. But when you're renting it out, you need to modify it for the new occupants. So you knock down a few walls and you get the MEP guys to come and put in some new ducts and some new air terminals and what have you. The electrical guys, they work to order to get everything hooked up to the electrical grid, and there you go. You can now rent the building out to the new tenant. But did you change that on the original model? Is the model reflecting the changes that you are bringing along? Did you create a new phase for that building and model that within a new digital model? Many times we find that, especially with legacy buildings dating from even the last century, that these models don't even exist. So we're dealing with PDFs or DWGs or so on. So this method of saying, all right, we're now going to own the data on our own hub as the owner. Imagine yourself to be the owner of one of these property portfolios or one of these skyscrapers. And now from year to year, you want to maintain the models so that you can at any time fire it up again. Now, granted, you don't know if Revit is going to be around 50 years from now. But chances are it will be around 5-10 years from now. Or at least something that can read the file format and interpret the file format. So if I have more and more of these buildings, maybe I become an international corporation, and I've got some buildings in Hong Kong, I've got some buildings in London and New York and Taiwan, wherever. Now I've got a property portfolio. If it's South Africa, maybe Joburg, Cape Town, Bloemfontein, Durban, whatever, doesn't matter. The point is, you now start building up a property portfolio. And each one of those must now also exist as a model. Right? And so we like to be able to maintain those property portfolios Sometimes it's a few buildings, other times it's hundreds of buildings, other times it's thousands of buildings, depending on how big the operation becomes. If it's a governmental organization, it might become very big indeed. So owning the digital twin allows the owner to operate on the model with different supply chain at a later stage. Okay? What's important there is if you own the data, you as the client or you as the owner has the ability through the exchange information request initially to stipulate that you want to have in your possession the original authored models in its format. In other words, in plain English, if they draw the model in Revit, then you must have the Revit model. It's not good enough that they give you a static representation of the model, like an IFC file, industry foundation class. It's a ubiquitous standard that can be read by many platforms, but it's a static model. You can't alter the model afterwards. So you as an owner has a vested interest and you say, no, that isn't sufficient, because 5 years from now, I might decide that I want to make some changes to my building. And so I don't want to have to remodel everything, and I don't want to have to be forced to go back to the person that originally did the work for me. I want to put it out to tender, and whoever is the best at that time is going to get the job. I will, within my contractual obligations, safeguard the intellectual property of the original modeler as good as possible. Basically state in writing that you are not allowed to use the information as anything other than what I intend you to use the information for. And if you use that other guy's intellectual property, then you are opening yourself up to a lawsuit. So we try and work together, and we try also to give as a supply chain, we try and give, in this case, we would be forced to give the owner operator / corporate owner, whoever it is, government, we give them the models, because if we don't give them the models, we don't get the job. All right, so that's the idea behind this. And the reason for that, for the owner, would be that you want to maintain your model in time. Now, it's an unfortunate reality that while we do have owner operators that know what they are doing, sometimes they don't. And this is true in many respects. So if you're going to do business with an overseas country and you don't know that country's laws, you will probably retain yourself a lawyer that is familiar with international financial law and treaties and what have you, and knows the government people and what must happen, and he will advise you and set up the contracts for you to sign. Now, in this case, your core business would probably not be to build skyscrapers. Your core business might be to be a bank or to be a food retailer, whatever you are. Point is that you can now hire somebody to say, well, we don't know what we're doing, but you know what you're doing, and you've got a track record and we trust you. So now you can come and advise us on how we can manage this process, that we can make money from our building, because the bottom line is important. I'm going to build an expensive building, and it's going to cost me a few $100 million, and I want to get the benefits from that for me and my shareholders for the next 60 years. So let's do it. And this is usually how a project would make money for the owner operator. Right? So pays to retain the services of your own BIM consultant, because they understand the supply chain and how it's supposed to operate. They can say what software must be used. They can say what common data environment must be used. They can stipulate the standards that must be used. They can stipulate the naming standard that must be used. There's a lot that they can do. And it all adds to the structured data that is within the project, and also the collection of the data that supports the requirements of the owner. So if you say that you want to maintain your asset using some or other maintenance standard like COBE, construction operations standard that was initiated by the American military, adopted by the Middle East and England and other parts of the world, and you want to be on par with what they do in their facilities maintenance, then you need to gather the information for those assets. So if you install something that's important, you want to know who installed it. You want to know what's the warranty on it. You want to have all the maintenance and the parts manuals digitized, PDF, attached to the asset. All that information should then be gathered that is relevant to what you want to do with it. And so that we can say from the beginning that must happen. Now there's a very interesting graph here. It is changing because of artificial intelligence coming into the workflow. But in essence, the idea here is that as the client, right at the beginning over here, at the effort and the effect, the ability to impact how a model is changing or will change is the biggest at the beginning during the preliminary design. After you get through the preliminary design, now it becomes less effective. And later on, it's very little change that you can actually do. But at the same time, and this is the important thing, the cost of you changing your mind later through the project just becomes more and more expensive. So, to put it again in plain English, the later you change your mind, the less money you will make. And the earlier you say what you want, the cheaper the supply chain can give you your project. So the idea would be, view the supply chain as a machine. Tell the machine what you want, and then get out of the way, because that's how you make money. And that's not something that is often understood, unfortunately. People think that if the supply chain can do what I tell them to at any time, that it means that they're a good supply chain. While that's true, it also means that you might like wasting money. And I don't think anybody who's in business wants to waste money. You want to maximize your profits, right? So for your shareholders. So get involved early, drop the money to get this process on the go. And then when it's in the detailed design phase, get out the way. That's how you will maximize your investment. And so that's also something that's helpful if you've got your own BIM consultant. So obviously we're not telling people that they don't have a right to become involved in their project, but we are advising them that there's ways to make money from this process. And we want to make that money for the client. So this is how we are going to make that money for the client. And that really does depend on the client getting, or the owner operator getting involved at the beginning of the project. Right. So that's the main thing to take out of this. Get involved right at the beginning. Say everything that you want, make it clear, and then after that's done, trust the guy that's looking after your investment to come and make the money for you over that development process of that built asset. Okay, we've discussed the fact that each contract taken out on an ACC license can create its own hub. The important thing here is that the owner of a hub has access to everything in there. So especially to the corporate clients, you might be familiar to the types of databases that in the modern age exist, where if you create the database on someone's server, then it's encrypted and not even the admin on the server itself can see your data because it's encrypted point to point. Maybe with some hardcore cracking software or supercomputers, you can read the information. Otherwise, not even the database administrators can gain access to your data. The Autodesk platform does not work like that. All right? So you as the owner of the hub, as the owner of the information, has full access to everything. Nobody can hide anything from you on that hub. On any project that you run, you can see anything and everything. So again, if you have a representative that does this for you, one must just be aware of this and make sure that there's no conflicts of interests within the supply chain or the contracts. If it's as serious like that, usually people just get on with the job. And the guys that are working on the project must be aware of this. Thankfully, there is a history of what happens to a file. So if there's a, if the guy that's running the project for you does the wrong thing and goes into somebody's silo and opens up an engineering project and sabotages the engineering model, then there will be a record that somebody has gone into that file and that something untoward happened. But importantly, you need to have somebody of unimpeachable character and somebody that understands their role within the hub and acts within that role, even though they've got full power, the power of God on that hub. They can do anything and everything, but it doesn't mean that they should. All right. So that's just one of the things that I know that, especially the tech savvy guys, you'll get that, is that it's not everything encrypted. There is at least one party that has access to everything. Usually, we like that to be the owner as well. We don't want that to be a compromised party. We don't want that to be somebody with a motive to do something that they shouldn't be doing. So that's just from a data perspective what's important there. So the data on the hub belongs to the owner and will be available until the licenses are no longer renewed. Right? So, like I said, even if you go back to owning just a docs license from year to year, so every year you'll incur the costs of a docs license, you will be able to store unlimited data. They don't put a cap on the amount of files that you can upload there. So you can have all your models up there for the price of one of these licenses, as opposed to having servers. And if you want to reactivate the project at a later stage, maybe you're going to do a new phase, you're going to do some alterations, some new buildings, then you will just purchase the license and it will become active again. The question of the intellectual property has already been discussed. The fact that we like to put that into writing and say that we will only use those models for the purposes they are intended, or otherwise, people will become involved in lawfare. And also, if you burn yourself with another company on a supply chain during one project, the chances are is that they're not going to work with you on the next one. So that's something in time. The guys that act honorably and responsibly, they are more and more included on projects, and the guys that take advantage, they are pushed out. Okay, so it's a natural attrition type thing, or evolution of a supply chain where the different consultants start trusting each other. So again, the project will probably be modified a few times over its life. Software doesn't stay the same from year to next. Sometimes software is retired. This is a challenge for owners, and remodeling must sometimes be done. It's an unfortunate reality. The best practice is to get on the bandwagon and to use the most prevalent and best globally supported software platforms. So it sounds a bit like a monopoly. It's not exactly a monopoly, but it's a big tech giant in the design sense, Autodesk. But it does mean that the Revit cloud files on the Autodesk Construction Cloud is the best solution that you can currently give yourself for future-proofing yourself against, whatever changes there will be within the technology. But it's an advantage. But that's not how BIM is touted. It's supposed to be agnostic, software agnostic. And while that is true in an idealized environment, on most supply chains, that's not true. Software is sometimes not supported in certain regions. In other regions, a certain piece of software might be more popular than in another because of patriotism or whatever. People might be quite proud that, I don't know, for argument's sake, Tekla is Finnish. And so in Finland, people use Tekla as opposed to Revit. But globally, betting on Autodesk is not a bad idea. And you are using the most commonly used software on the most commonly used construction cloud or common data environment. Then the nice thing is that in Revit, with Revit cloud files without giving it back to the consultants. You can update the files from year to year. You can just press a button and it will go from 2023 to 2024. It will upgrade them to the new version. Right. So if you were clever as a property manager, and if your property portfolio extended to the technology, if you run a mining company, it might be a bit different, because then you need your Plant 3D and other software to come into play. Maybe Civil 3D, maybe InfraWorks, depends on the project. But if you're able to say, all right, you are doing residential buildings, apartment buildings, if you are doing corporate headquarters or whatever, and you use Revit cloud files, then the maintenance of those models is a no-brainer, because you just press the button each year and it happens automatically. You don't have to go and maintain the services of other people, the engineers for the MEP and the electrical and the drainage and the plumbing and the fire, and you don't need to get anybody involved. You just press a button and your files will upgrade. So that will be the clever play, because that's how you'll make your money. Okay, and then you can even specify the software that you want at the beginning of the project. So again, we are an Autodesk reseller. This is what we sell. But do your own investigation, and you'll see that the Autodesk Construction Cloud and the Revit models are special. You can just click on the button and upgrade them from one year to the next. So there's not a lot to show you in the technical sense here, but basically, if you've got the Autodesk Construction Cloud, and you're on one of your projects, then and you wanted to manage those files, then it will be a simple matter. You go to your project that you are busy with, and then to your settings, and if everything is a Revit model, a cloud Revit model, you just hit the button. After it's found all the files, you hit the button, it upgrades it for you. It's as simple as that. So a very powerful technology in the maintenance of your models from year to year. I think it's understated to an owner sometimes that they don't know this. But if your representative had to tell you this and say that you'll incur minimum cost to upgrade your models every year, if you stipulate in your exchange information requests that you demand Revit cloud models modeled on the Autodesk Construction Cloud, then you just press a button each year and your models are upgraded. Then there is also something called Autodesk Tandem, right? So it's something that's nascent technology. It's very exciting, and the Autodesk Tandem platform is something that's also new to us. Autodesk Tandem, and this is where the digital twins are going. So it's something you can leverage the information that's on that connected databases on the Autodesk Construction Cloud, right? And this is where a lot of development is going to happen in the future. I expect that there might be some good facilities management software that's going to spin off from this. Currently, we've got Autodesk Ops, which is still a disconnected database from the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So I look forward to seeing what we can do with this. And in this also, we've got the ability to input IoT data from transducers, which might become very interesting for trigger events on when maintenance must happen. So that is quite exciting. I know we're running out of time here. I'm passionate about what I'm talking about, but let's see how far we can get. I think we're almost through our itinerary here, right? So that's Autodesk Tandem. You can definitely keep an eye on this. And then how can projects be transferred from one hub to another hub? You can do that through bridges, right? But then you lose that information, like who got rid of the car. You'll lose that info. Now, there are also third-party integrations that can copy your ACC project files from your hub onto, say, OneDrive or some other cloud platform. I use RoboCopy myself if I want to back up a project. But again, the only thing that you're backing up is the model files. You don't get the information that's inside of that project that was captured. So best is, first prize is to own the hub yourself, to own the project. That's why it's better that you own it from the very beginning. And then just pay your license for docs every year. Like I said, it's an unlimited space storage. You can't get it for a better price. And if you had to purchase a server or alternative storage, it will cost quite expensive over time. And then you just maintain it from there. So you can always reactivate the project in its full capability if you purchase another license later on down the line. And then you just assign that to the person of your choice. In conclusion, I would say that the owner-operator should initiate a project on their own hub using Collaborate Pro and a build license. Baseline. Then you've got total control over the platform for the design team as well as the construction team. After that is a different question, but the collection of information and the beneficiation of technology to the project, being able to use cell phones on site for snag lists, quality control, whatever, is going to be available to you. And after the project is done, you can revert to a docs license just to have the project on record and to reactivate at whatever time you please or you choose. And to maintain the project from year to year, be that through contracting consultants to do that for you if the file formats doesn't lend themselves to the same capability as the Autodesk Revit cloud format. And if you did stipulate at the beginning that it's only Autodesk Revit cloud formats, you would be able to maintain that model at the click of a button. So I hope you've enjoyed this short webinar. I hope that it's clarified for you that there's some benefits to storing your digital twins on the Autodesk platform. Please don't hesitate to contact us here at Micrographics. We can certainly advise you how you might store the information for your property portfolios and how you might go about retaining the correct skills to manage your assets for you so that you can maximize the return on your investment in whatever infrastructure or building you are designing. You can find our contact details there, and we look forward to hearing from you.